Good morning, good afternoon, and in some cases, good evening. My name is Timothy Crawford. I'm going to be leading this webinar today. Thank you for joining me. If you have questions, please type them into the chat as we go along, and I'll try and go back there and take a look. Today, we're going to be talking about the latest release of FlowJo version 11, which is v11.1. That actually is now available for download on the FlowJo website. So if I pop out of this presentation and just go over here to the website, under the download tab, FlowJo v11, you'll find these three download links for Mac OS and Windows. There's two different Mac downloads, one for the M series Apple Silicon chips and the one for the older Intel Macs. Just a single one for Windows. And we'll go through the installation process and such as part of this slide deck, and then I will do a live demo and give you guys a chance to ask questions. So if you've been a FlowJo user for a while, you've probably gotten some emails saying FlowJo version 11 is now out and available. And this is the first large update of V11 to 11.1. I'm going to go through the overall design and different areas of the program, and then I'm going to load some data, show you how to move around in the application, where to point and click, and what you can do. So just to start off, what are the differences between V11 and FlowJo version 10, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with? The first is that you do log in with a separate helper app called BD Access Portal that manages the licensing. So there'll be a second app to install, and you log into that, which authorizes you to use the 11 application. It is an immersive application, which means it's a single window. None of these big windows popping up, all these little graph windows that you have to manage or lose on external monitors. So single view with different panels and different contexts that represent the different areas of the V10 program, like the graph window area or the layout editor or the table editor. There are themes now in V11, including dark modes and different color modes. So if you don't like that bright white in your face, try one of the dark mode options. That's really pretty sleek. I'll use one of the themes that's not the standard one today, just as an example. There's an updated sample hierarchy, meaning the gating is a little bit different. The groups are organized hierarchically. And when you gate, you actually apply the gate to all samples in the group uniformly in the first place. So I'll show you the detail there, but there's some learning to be done in how to use that gating hierarchy. And it'll become familiar quite quick when you start working with it. There is a new graph main context called the Metadata Manager that includes things like parameter sets and keywords. You can import keywords new in v11.1 from a CSV file to add a bunch of keyword labels to your FCS files, but we'll go through each step. There's a built-in QC algorithm. This is a very Flow AI-like, and with the same checks as Flow AI. And there's tunables, and it's super fast. So you click the button, and it's like 1 second per file instead of 1 minute per file, which is really nice. There is a full unmixing compensation platform that I'll show you. There is actually an advanced webinar on the focusing on compensation in FlowJo 11.1 on the 20th of November by my colleague Giannis in Europe. So please sign up if you can and you're interested in the details about how to create matrices in FlowJo or unmixing. There's a beautiful graph gallery in this version, which allows you to see a bunch of different graphs in a kind of panel and change the way those are laid out. You can look at each individual sample. You can look at each parameter across a single sample. Very, very nicely done gallery of visual aids to support your discovery workflows. There's a built-in clustering tool, XShift, as well as a built-in dimensionality reduction tool, Tsany. There are tables like in V10, but these are auto-batched and there's kind of like drag and drop to build. So a little bit different from the V10 workflow, but I will show you how to do that. And then there are charts, which is a new thing, completely different from V10, which never had actual graphs to summarize the data, but now we can build bar and pie charts and even do statistical tests like t-tests or Yeah, a basic t-test across comparing one condition to others and actually get p-values and statistical significance values that way. The reports pages now replace the layout editor, so we're calling the layout what was the layout editor reports. This is a page-oriented batching, so you set up your like source page and then you batch across that. And it's a toggle on and off, so you can show the source versus the batching. It's really quite cool. There's a lot you can do with it, and more than V10 capabilities at least. There is built-in support for imaging in that you can load imaging cytometer data. It will now, in version 11.1, automatically, if you choose to turn on that preference, it will automatically unzip or extract the images as TIFFs from a CBW file from your imaging cytometer. And then we have a bunch of preferences where you can toggle on, how many digits to show, where things show, what scaling you get for a given set of samples from a given cytometer. So like the cytometers, scaling, transformation settings and such. So I'm sorry to belabor this slide, but there is a lot of differences. We're going to go through each one first as a slide and then as a demonstration. So first thing to be aware of, which catches people off guard, is that there are two applications. When you download and run the installer, you will see both the FlowJo v11 app as well as the BD Access Portal app. In a Mac, you just take these and drag them to this link to your applications folder and they will install. On a Windows PC, you just want to keep these two buttons checked. Don't turn them off because you'll need both v11 and the licensing agent to run it. And just run it with defaults and install it in your program files. If you can't install in program files, it's probably due to your IT. As in a regulated environment, you need to get your IT guy to install applications, okay? So launch BD Access Portal once it's installed, and you'll get this window where you can put in your account credentials for your BD Access Portal, FlowJo Portal license, right? So this is your email, this is your password, and you click sign in, and that will change and show that you're signed in. The key aspect here, if you're launching BD Access Portal and you're wondering if it's working, is whether or not this little globe icon in the bottom left-hand corner is green. If it's red, or in the first versions of this, yellow, like it is not connecting to the server and it's being blocked by some IT security. And that could be a proxy where you can enter proxy information by clicking these three dots, or it could be that your IT guys need to put in some sort of exception to allow the application to reach the internet through their security software. So again, green is good. If it's red or yellow, you've got some problem with the network blocking the communication and it's not going to work properly. I mentioned this is an immersive application. So here's a view of the actual app with some data loaded, and we're on this graphs context, which is like your graph window. And so just to orient you, we've got all these buttons on the left-hand side are the different areas of the program. So you load data, it starts out at the graph context to show you the data. But if I want to deal with keywords and create parameter sets that then I can use to choose subsets of parameters in different ways, you go to the Metadata Manager. The QC algorithm is here under the QC platform. These double overlaid histogram looking, kind of the M, that's your matrices or unmixing compensation tools. Then we have our graph window area. Then we have the algorithms, that's TSNE and UMAP. Tables, charts, that's your pie charts and your bar charts, and then reports. And down here in the very bottom is your heart icon for modifying preferences. Up in the top left-hand corner, we've got some basic actions similar to the FlowJo 10 static toolbar. This is add samples. Personally, I like to drag and drop. It's just out of habit, but you can also navigate through your file system with the little plus button to add samples. This plus in the next to it is the groups at create groups. You can see the icons are similar to V10, even if they don't have the coloring. Add statistics and add keywords. So statistics and keywords can be added to the table here through these applications. So down here we have all of the samples that are in the group you've selected, and we're looking at ungated events in the graph window. So all of this is contextual. This controls what you're looking at and what you're running operations on. There are groups up at the top that are hierarchical, right? That you can have indented groups that are subgroups of each parent group. And then there is a compensation group, an acquired data group that's like all samples, and an experiment data group. So what will happen is if you have the word comp or unstained in the single color compensation controls, they will be detected automatically as compensation controls, and they will go to the compensation data group. Everything else will go to experiment data. So it's looking to separate compensation samples from your full experiment, all stain samples. You can always create your own groups, right? You can right click and actually create groups from a keyword, which will make folders or groups for every unique keyword value in the keyword you choose. So it's easy to parse out your samples into groups if you already have them labeled. And then once you click on this icon to bring us to the graph window, we can start gating with the gating tools and navigating here. You can navigate by selecting different groups and selecting different samples or with the arrow buttons. All of the controls are going to be on the right for changing the features of what you're looking at. So here I'm looking at a pseudo color plot, right? But we have contours and dot plots and histograms. There's a whole bunch of different color palettes. You can change the background color. There's a smoothing option. And, it's just a different orientation than what you're used to with all the pop-up windows and modularized windows of FlowJo v10. So yes, this is kind of a work through the area of the program. This is your contextual menu with groups and samples, and the gates will build up right here in the middle when we start drawing them. You've got your X and Y choices. You can click the T button to go to your transformation tools, which will be over here on the right. You can click the XY to control the XY parameter settings, and now in V10 or V11.1, we have high resolution graphics you can choose from. And then you can, this little pancake icon at the top will hide the drawer so you can make more room for the center plot. So we can actually hide this side drawer and this side drawer and put everything in the big screen for the context, for the focus of the context you're interested in. And so I'm sorry, I said all that. Now I'm going to say it again, right? So over on the left is your kind of areas of context that change what you're looking at in the discovery panel. And then the properties panel, what you get access to here is linked to the tools in the discovery panel. What do you need to do? Modifying graphs, adding a keyword to a table, those are going to be over here in the properties panel. In the navigation and population sample panel here, right? The analysis tree, it gives you the groups at the top. And then within the groups, you have samples. Click on a group, you get the samples shown in that group. And then you've got populations area that will build up when you start gating. Here's an example of some of the themes. Just going to check our chat here real quick. No, we're good. All right. Our themes can be dark, they can be light, they can be multicolored, it depends on what you like. We have a app sign named Veronica. She made her own theme and we implemented it. So you'll find a Veronica and a Serena theme. Choose the one you like, right? The sample hierarchy, once again, we have groups at the top. All files will go into the acquired data group. Only things that say comp or unstained, so that's the key nomenclature. Put the word comp into your single stain controls and they'll go here automatically. We'll go to the compensation group. Otherwise, you can select and drag them to the group, of course. Once you start creating matrices, you will have your compensation matrices in the middle here. And you can drag and drop those to groups or samples in order to apply them. And then we have this experiment data group. So experiment data is all the full stain samples, ideally, and any subgroups that you want to make out of that. Again, we've got this middle section. This is where you'll find your gates. These bad events and good events gates were created by running the quality control module, and then that gets a little check after you run quality control that it's been checked, and then you would gate off of the good events group. If I'm looking at a single sample, right, I can click on it here or navigate through with the arrows, and it'll show me the count events. You can add frequency of parent statistics or other statistics through this little plus statistic button up at the top here that will be shown as columns. So if you don't like counts, we can add frequency of parent there, and I do think that will be the default in a future version given the feedback. All right, it'll make a little more sense when I actually show you live. So let's go to the next. See if I can get there. Oh, okay. In the Metadata Manager, so we're going down one step and we're looking at Metadata Manager. You have options for keywords, parameters, and parameter sets. There are three tabs here. The keywords just show you all of the keywords, and you can sort through them, and you can pivot the keyword table to get the information you need out of the files. The parameters allow you to view all of the parameters and toggle off whether you see the scatter or the uncompensated, and it gives you a simple interface to go ahead and label your stain. So if you're one of those people that just jumped on the machine and ran your data but didn't label anything, going to this parameters section will allow you to type in the stain information, that's the target antigen for the antibody that's reading out in this color in your multicolor experiment. So no more find all the reagents and add them to display as columns. You just go here and you add the information. And then we have a new concept of parameter sets in FlowJo 11, which is super cool because you can make these parameter sets. Any subset of parameters can be created into a parameter set. And then when you're in the graph window, you can limit what your choices are by selecting the parameter set first, and then it will only display those parameters as options in the graph drop-down menus for the X and Y axis when you're picking the channels, or scrolling through them, or choosing to run a T and E with that subset of parameters, right? It gives you a handle to access subsets of your parameters more efficiently than selecting them over and over again. And that's gotten more important as the number of parameters has skyrocketed or increased over the last 10 years. So yeah, that's the metadata manager section. And then we go down one more. So here's metadata, and then we're going to the QC. When you go to the QC, it'll say, oh, it's got all these settings over here, and you can choose to change the tunables and select which parameters that the algorithms will be run on if you don't want to QC every sample, or I'm sorry, every parameter in your samples. But it will by default select all of the uncompensated parameters, and we use these defaults that run pretty well on most data that we've tested it on. This is very flow AI-like, where you have signal stability for each channel, the flow rate check over time, again, stability check, and then dynamic range if the events are outside of the range of the instrument. At the top or the bottom, it'll cut them off. You have that on, and you can choose to do that for the top or the bottom. Now I'm going to play this movie, so I know it's going to take a few seconds, but it's quality controlling the 20 samples it's running the algorithm on the 20 samples in this experiment data group. And instead of taking a minute per sample file, it literally takes a second. So now we have these reports. You can scroll through them or change by selecting what sample you are focused on here in the samples pane, right? Or use the arrows. You can change which signal you're actually focusing on at the top by selecting it here. And of course, you can rerun it with different tunables if you would like to replace the results of these data. But it is much faster than the R-based plugin algorithms that we are currently employing in FlowJo v10 for quality control. Going down another step, if you need to calculate your unmixing, there is a modern unmixing platform. The essence of it is that you have to select the compensation data group before you can initiate this calculation, and you have a setup wizard that is similar to V10 in some ways, in that you've got a line item for every color that you have in this experiment, or every open channel. The compensation controls, those single color controls, are assigned to the brightest channel in the system. And then you have the options to automatically size gate and then range gate on your positive and negative to give you these populations that are assigned. By default, the wizard will go spectral and auto spill on. Auto spill means we don't need to define the positive and negatives. We just use the size gate and then do robust linear regression to get the slopes of each interaction, which then are converted into a coefficient of spillover and inverted to get your matrix, right? Well, unmixing a little bit different. But your basic math is all about getting that slope, right? So we can tell how much did we take away or how much of each color is spilling into each other color. You do have a visual profile of the entire spectra across the instrumentation here at the top. You can toggle on traditional, which is using positive and negative gates defined by you or the system to calculate those slopes instead of auto spill. Um, I'm sorry, traditional is just using the specified parameters, not all parameters. Auto spill toggle off will turn it back to I define my positive and negative for each sample, and then those are the populations that we draw the slope through. Again, I'm not going to go into detail here, or even like do a huge demo and show you all the bells and whistles, but there is a webinar on the 20th that is focusing on compensation platform in FlowJo 11. So please do join us for that if that is a topic that is of interest to you. New in V10 11.1, right? The one that just came out. We actually have T buttons here, and I didn't update the slide today, but there is a drawer that allows you to transform here in this window, in this context, through the transform slider bar, that drawer that comes out. And you don't have to leave this context to change the transforms in order to, get your positives and such. But it is pretty slick, and I highly recommend that next webinar for details on it. All right, if you set up your positive and negatives and you run the calculation, you can actually choose to create the matrix immediately, or you can preview the matrix before it's actually created to see if it's what you like and go back and forth. So when you create a matrix or preview a matrix, you get the actual matrix that's going to be calculated, displayed. And there are radio buttons up here to show different aspects. This is in preview form, so we're just showing the preview of the matrix. Once you create the matrix, you will get access to things like unmixing correction option and spillover spreading, similarity matrices, which is cosine similarity between the fluorochromes, and then total spread matrix, which will only be calculated if you do true positive negative gates, because that's what that calculation depends on. But we get a nice display. You can toggle on and off the heat mapping. And then you have this preview plot, which is like focused on a certain parameter. So this is one parameter by everything else. And you can, when you click on these different line items, either on the rows, you will get that parameter highlighted, and will show you the distribution of events in each by variate combination. And you can choose to display this as a contour or a dot plot. There are different options now. Of course, you can use autofluorescence, treat it as a fluorochrome. You can include more than one. And the key correction matrix thing, I'll revisit when I show you in the application here in the demo. Moving down from compensation, so once I've created a matrix, it'll show up here as a compensation matrix. I can drag and drop that matrix to a sample or to a group of samples like experiment data to apply them, and the color of the badge will turn the color of the matrix that's applied. Clicking one below here in this bivariate plot looking icon will bring us to our graph window context. And the graph window is redesigned to have a primary plot where you can focus on, and then a gallery. And the gallery is super cool when you have a big monitor and you spread it out and you can see all 28 or 35 parameters in each small plot. And then all you have to do is click on it to elevate it, and then you can gate on it. It's really a nice overview of what your visuals. So this graph gallery originally just had view by sample and view ancestry, but now it also has downstream views. So you can pick a target population and look from this population to that through the hierarchy down. So when you change something here, you'll see the effect of it downstream. And it has backgating, which is where we do kind of like an overlay upstream of on all the gates, removing one gate at a time to show what would happen if you didn't have that gate. Like, where are these events that would squeak into your gate if you removed each level in the gating hierarchy? That's the classic backgating, not just an overlay. Overlays are overlays. Backgating in FlowJo sense is this removal one gate at a time to give you more information. If you click the T button, it'll slide out this drawer. Remember, all the contextual and control stuff is over here. The T button allows you to change the transform of the parameter that you've selected. You can actually select more parameters. You can limit here to a parameter set. And there's also parameter sets. When you click here, you have an option to say, I only want to look at my parameter set, or I only want to see the scatters on the X, or I only want to see the compensated. Right? So there's already some default parameter sets to toggle on, just my compensated parameters, just my scatters. And then you can make any custom set as well to limit what you have to scroll through when you're, going through. Another cool thing about this last release is there are hotkeys now available. And while they are a little bit different than the V10 hotkeys, some people might have adopted, there are a lot of options. So you can now use hotkeys to scroll through the X or Y or the color axis over here when I turn this on. Um, it's pretty cool. So let's see, do I have a video here? I don't think so. It's just the next context. So if we load some imaging data, you will notice that we can get all the images, and there are various features that we can deal with in the imaging wall here to adjust. Yeah, I'm just trying to, sorry, to adjust the views and the imaging parameters for each of the imaging channels and the colors for their smoothing and other imaging features. And that's all done from the graph gallery, but I don't think I have a good video on that one. Nope. Okay. So built-in X shift and T-SNE. Trust me, we'll spend some time here looking at the graph window in just a few minutes at the end of the presentation when I load some data. T-SNE and X shift are built in. They run Op-SNE and they have built-in embedding. There are options to choose subsets of parameters and change all the tunables. But it does run on all of the events in your gated population for the group. It just chooses a subset of events to run, and then it intercalates the rest of those events that it didn't run the original algorithm on using an embedding function. So just a warning, if you have 10 million events in your population, it's going to take a while to run. But we do have, T-SNE and XShift built in as algorithms so far as the options. The tables is built a little bit differently. So I'm going to go to the table section. I'm going to play this movie now where it just shows a basic way to get your data in. So you start with dragging a group of samples or an individual sample from the groups pane. Will show you all the samples in that group. And then if you drag over a population, you'll get your frequencies. And then over here on the right, you will be able to add medians, geometric means, other frequencies, standard deviations, whatever your favorite summary statistics are to the table. And what is nice is you can multi-select in the gates, add a median for multiple channels, and do that all in one click. But again, it's a choose the group as opposed to choosing group from dropdown. You choose the group by bringing in the group, dragging and dropping it in the table, and then you choose the the gates that you want to view as frequencies, and then over here there's going to be options for your statistics to add to that table. You can also add keywords, but I think the little bar's cut off and whoever made the screenshot, which was not me. So charts are an extension of tables. Once you have created a table and you have a keyword in that table that distinguishes your different groups that you want to compare, such as experimental condition or treatment group, whatever you want to call it, right? And those can be added as keywords in your metadata manager, right? And you can label those and say, I want group 1 to be compared to group 2. What are your comparator groups? You can make different groups out of those, right? Just by right-clicking and then selecting create group from keyword. But once we get to the table, we want to add that distinguishing condition keyword so that we can use it to build our chart. What we're doing here is saying, I want to focus on a table that was called T-regs, and we want to use categorical variables to define our primary axis. So that's, do we want to look at conditions, that is the different disease states within. And then we want to, oops, I think it was a little fast there. And then we want to show the statistics down here for these are the statistics in the table. So these are the keyword columns that can distinguish things, and then these are the statistics that we can show. The next step is she's going over here. Again, whoever made this movie for us is going and changing the context so that now we're doing a statistical test. And the choice is a t-test here. We're looking across that main category condition between the healthy specimens and the COVID positive patients. There are statistical threshold settings that you can add. We use the base, p value 0.005 significance. And then you can toggle on actual connecting bars showing the line or the p-value or just an asterisk or all of that. So she's turning on the p-values and showing the differences between these different groups here. Summary charts can be exported. They can be put into your reports, but this is powerful because you're creating the table and it's all linked. The chart data will update if your data changes in the tables from changing or moving a gate on your samples. So it's all connected. Okay, I'm just going to check my chat here. All right. Oh, I see somebody chat. No, okay. Reports, right? Reports is visualization. We have this canvas that you can create custom size or just do standard. So we start with a default custom that's pretty big and get about 20 samples on there in their default state by dragging and dropping, or you just drag one and then you view the batch, and the batch iteration controls are down here. So if I have 20 samples, I drag one over and I want to then show that same plot for all 20. I would choose the number of rows and columns that I want to display and choose whether I batch through this group across or down. So in this case, I might go, I want 4 rows by 5 columns, and I want to batch across because I've got 5 patients times 4 conditions. And that would give me a nice tiling of that plot, with rows being the different conditions and columns being the different patients plots, right, from those conditions. Again, I'll show that to you in a moment, but I'm just going to click the video here. So in this case, they're actually overlaying an XShift cluster and then batching by population so that the populations batch across all of the samples. And then he's creating a second page for this report right here with the plus page and dragging in a table and a chart to summarize the results. Reports have gotten quite a bit of work in v11.1, so you can now normalize histogram overlays to modal scaling. Everything is SVG graphics, and again, there are high resolution options, so you can toggle from the standard 256 DPI to 512 to 1024 and see higher resolution graphs. You can make them as big as you want. All of the drawer options over here are what we're going to focus on when we get into the demo here. So there is support for imaging off of FACS Discover S8 and A8 instruments. That includes a built-in image wall. It is not as feature-rich as the V10 CellView Lens plugin at this point, but that's going to be one of the big pushes for the next release is improved, expanded features for imaging support. Just know that you can load your data from a FACS Discover instrument, and if it's a CVW and it hasn't been extracted, it will detect that, it will automatically extract the images for you, so you don't have to run a separate image extractor. And then you can toggle on and off all of these different imaging channels, change their colors, change their exposure, gamma, and smoothing with the slider bars. So more features to come. And I hope that you guys have had an opportunity to look at these instruments because they're pretty amazing with what you can get out. Preferences. So there's a tiered set of preferences, right? Last section, and we'll get into the demo. There's a workbench preferences. So if you start changing workbench level preferences with this tab, it will ask you to save the workbench, and all the changes you make then are only for this workbench. It doesn't affect your global preference settings that happen when you start. If you click on the user tab, then you're modifying your user login preferences. And these are local, files saved in directories on your computer that are specific to you with these options toggled on and off. And then when FlowJo 11 opens, it reads that and says, oh, these are what you want to do in terms of display or plot resolution defaults and such, right? Whether you extract the images when you load a FACS file, you can toggle that off if you don't want that to happen. Computer will affect all users of that device, right? Even if you have a different login. So there's different tiered preferences where an administrator could say, I want these to be the defaults. The user says, nah, I like seeing this number of digits when I work. And then at the workbench level, you could say, for this, I want to toggle off the names and only show stains, right? Just for this workbench to display. When you click apply, that applies the changes. Reset will take you back to defaults. We will continue to add preferences in here. It's not all of the things that are in V10 are here yet. It is a very feature-rich program, and it will take some time to bring it up to par. But as an overview, what's actually going on in V11.1 compared to 11.0? We did a bunch of bug fixes, functional improvements, right? Performance enhancements, and expanded new features. There is now support to import V10 workspaces. So you can take that V10 workspace that you created, you can bring it into V11. It will convert to a V11 format all of the groups, the gates, and the compensation matrices. It will also bring in derived parameters if you've run plugins. It will not convert the tables and layouts from your V10 workspaces yet. The format is so different and still in flux here that it's really hard to do that. But you can get your converted workspaces in to do downstream work in V11 now in this V11.1 release. You can import keywords from a CSV file using a mapping keyword. So pick a unique keyword, create a CSV with columns. I'll show you an example here. And then you can one click add all those keywords to all your samples in one action. There are keyboard shortcuts or hotkeys. So get used to your Option, Command, Shift, Control modifiers, and you can start moving around in this program in all different ways, including up and down the gating hierarchies, 2 different areas of the program within that program. They've done a really good job of giving you a large repertoire of actions as shortcuts for those people that enjoy clicking their keyboard instead of using their mouse. High resolution plots are pretty cool, right? I know it's been a long, requested higher resolution for if you want to see those events that are just outliers, or if you want to look at if you want to send a high quality image for publication, right? So now you can go all the way up to 1024 resolution with the plots if you choose to. We also can quickly export those plots. So we're just a right click, copy and paste, works from everywhere now in the graph context, in the report editor, in the table section. You can bring that information out into your PowerPoint file with just a click and copy and paste action. Third parameter heat map now has an absolute color range. So it's back to like what the V10 expectation is, which is the range of the transform dictates the colors. Eventually there will be custom ranges in there, but it was coloring a little bit different, and we aligned that so it looks more like a V10 experience. Backgating and downstream hierarchy options are now available in the graph gallery, which were not supported in the previous version, which is super cool because, again, you want to be able to change a gate, see the result of that downstream. That's available. And then the backgating is removing each gate in the hierarchy so you can see what's going on. If you were to remove that gate completely, what events you would get in the absence of that gate in the final population. And then there's new report plot formatting, histogram overlays, like showing hiding plot elements can be done now, and modal scaling of the histogram overlays. Unfortunately, stacking or staggering the histograms is not yet available. It will be in the next version where you have the various half offset or complete offset and stagger options, as well as shading and other formatting features for histograms in those plots. So that's my spiel on the deck. And now I'm going to go in and I'm going to launch V11 and we're going to look at it together. So feel free to pipe up in the chat if you have questions specifically, but what I'm going to do is just bring up the application. Actually, before I do that, just know that remember that you have BD Access Portal. So BD Access Portal is a separate application. It needs to be running for FlowJo 11 to authenticate. When you have it running, you put in your email and your password. Oh, mistyped there myself. And then it becomes authenticated. So once that's on, then FlowJo 11 won't tell you to go launch BD Access Portal or to log in. It'll be logged in, and we have this landing page. The landing page allows you to go to FlowJo website, go to help docs, go to BD Research Cloud to build your panels. Open new workbenches, open existing workbenches. The last 5 that you used are right here as recents, or create a new workbench. And I do like that in V11.1, instead of closing the application when you close a workbench, it reverts back to this landing page, similar to the V10 experience. So you can open another workspace or workbench and go ahead and move on with it, right? So you can always get back to this. It won't close. I'm going to minimize myself maybe, so I can see everything that's going on. All right, I'm just moving some bars here. This is my workbench. I am using, under the View tab, the theme for Tangerine, which is kind of cool, but maybe you want to do Amber. Maybe you want to do Madison. I like Madison. That's a good looking theme in my view. So I'm going to stick with that one. Now I'm going to load some data, right? So I've got some demo data here. We're going to load this set of multi-disease samples that were in the screenshots. It's actually that data set that was on Flow repository when I said it's demo time. There's a little note there. So this is available data that's already published. What we're going to do here, just move my bar again here. It's the hardest thing when you're doing Zoom stuff. You can't see what's going on with your bars. Okay. So I've got my Metadata Manager. Shows all of the samples. I can sort through the samples for certain things like, I want to find the $ site. I want to find, $ BTIM and beginning time of acquisition of that sample, right? You can sort. You can also pivot the table in the sorted or unsorted version. So now you're looking at keywords as a list, and the samples, I'm sorry, the keywords in rows and the samples in columns, right? So I can add keywords here. I'm going to search for key, and I'm going to add my new keyword, right, with a value of hello keywords. And click add, right? And that gets added as this. And now I'm searching for it and actually find something with the word key in it, and it shows my displayed keyword here. You can also choose a keyword to map and import other keywords in. So in this case, I'm going to use an absolutely unique value that is incorporated into every FCS file called the GUID. And this is going to be a column that you can export, and then you add all your additional keyword columns. I'll actually show you what that looks like here. If I open up my little table here, all right, so I've got the unique GUID for every sample. I've got keyword 1 iteration, discrimination, sort order. Some are alphanumeric, some are just numeric, but I want to get all of this information into those 20 samples. And so I exported the GUID. It originally also had the sample name, which I deleted after adding all of my additional new columns. And now, saved as a CSV in Excel, I can import from that file and say map to my GUID, keyword table import right there. So it brings it in and says that, oh, 60 keywords were added. And now my key shows that I've got a sort order keyword, a discrimination, and another iteration keyword that I can do. And, you know, if you want to display these things, of course, remember that the samples table down here by default has counts, but I can also choose to add keywords or other features. So I'm going to go frequency of parent and add that statistic as a column. Now I've got frequency of parent. If I don't like the counts, I can delete that column, right? And because I'm on ungated, there's an NA because there's no parent gate right now. So I can't do a calculation of frequency of parent. But I can also then add my keyword here. And if I like my sort order keyword to be there, then I'll add it. And then I can sort up and down my sample list by my preferred sort order keyword. All right, so add the keyword to your samples table here, add the keywords in your metadata manager, either as individual columns, which then you can label yourself or have a uniform value, or you can map in from any unique keyword that's unique across all the samples. You can import the keywords from a CSV file. I do see a question asking if you have presentation slides later on. Yes, we do have the ability. Just email flowjomedia@bd.com. We can get you the presentation slides, no problem. These will also be recorded. So once you finish up here, once we close this, in like a day or three, it will end up in our webinars section, which is under the Learn tab at flowjo.com. And if you go to webinars, you'll see the upcoming webinars here. This is me, right? Giving the webinar today. Future ones, here's Giannis giving the 20th webinar on Unmixing. And then these are previously recorded webinars. So it'll show up here as the first tile and previously recorded. You can always come back to access it. But yes, we can get you the presentation slides. Thank you. Thank you for your question. All right, so I mentioned a few things about these drawers, right? I'm doing things over here. These are different icons for different tools. In this case, the metadata manager just has one, right? We're adding keywords, and then everything else is done in the tabs here. But I can also show or hide the drawers on either side, right? So if you want to spread this central panel out, we can expand that. And all right, so we're in keywords. If we want to manage the parameters, then you have all the parameters shown that are compensated in scatter, but if you want uncompensated to be shown too, you check the box. If you don't want the scatters to be shown, right? But mostly this parameters tab is for adding stain names if you didn't do it, or modifying them if you accidentally mistyped something and you want to change it, okay? And that will then assign this as the stain name. And remember, you usually display both the PNN, that's the name of the detector or the channel in the FCS file, and then the $PNS, which is the stain reagent for that channel. And those are combined together, so you can see, well, what channel is this reagent reading out in? Of course, you can toggle on to display these one or the other in your preferences now here across the board. So if you don't like seeing those long fluorochrome channel names, you could choose to do this and go here and parameter and gate labels, and you could choose to only show one or the other. I'm leaving everything. That's my preferred. The one thing I do like to change is I immediately go and change user to 2 number of decimals instead of 4, because I don't like having all those decimal places. But there's options here, right? Default resolution of the plots I've left, but you can always toggle them on. Okay, so label your parameters. Parameter sets, we have the ability to select subsets of parameters, right? And send them add selected. We'll bring them over to these parameters that are now in this parameter set. So add selected will give me a subset, and I can rename this and say my subset 1, right? And you could divide it into functional markers, surface markers, intracellular, what subsets are useful for you to limit the list, because when you're always looking through 28 to 35 parameters at a time, when you've already gated on the ones or that you don't want to look at for their phenotypes, it's just extra information that doesn't need to be displayed. So now you can limit it. All right. And you can create new parameters. You can duplicate and modify this. You can delete this parameter set, right? It's the only option here, but parameter sets allow you to make subsets. And that contextually, if we go back here, and I'll get back to this, is that we can now choose my subset 1 and only the parameters in that subset are there then. And if I want to, I can advance through these parameters using hotkeys now, right, to display the data for that subset of parameters, going up or down. Right? Without even clicking and choosing the parameter. So that's the benefit of parameter sets. Highly recommended. All right, the quality control. We are here in the quality control. It's going to run on experiment data always. Whatever's in experiment data will get this QC plots. And typically, I just run it with defaults, right? If you don't like it, some of the things to turn off are the dynamic range, or some data is not amenable to the flow rate check. For example, if it doesn't have a time parameter, you can't do that. Peristaltic pumps aren't really great for flow rate, or flow rate stability. So it can be data specific, but you can turn off any of those checks. And again, 20 minutes in V10 running Flow AI on a per sample basis compared to 20 seconds here for the results. So I'm not going to count to 20, but I promise you it's much, much, much faster experience. There we go. Now we've got good events and bad events on every single sample, right? All contextual. One I click on is the one I have a report for. If I want to see an overlay on good and bad, I can view different plots at the top here, and then I can scroll through the samples and see what was removed, right? Red is removed, blue is preserved. And you see that first sample had some big problems, but some of the others are pretty good. All right, and because I have my frequency apparent here, now when I'm on good events, I'm actually seeing the frequency that was preserved for each of my samples, and it's easy to compare just by scrolling down, right? Or section dividers can be changed. You can bring the entire thing up and hide everything else, right? So you can move these around depending on what you need access to if the sections get too big and you have too many samples. All right, so now compensation wizard. Again, I'm going to go fast here because this is just an intro, but come to the next webinar on the 20th or watch it once it's recorded and you will be able to follow along with Giannis showing you everything. Why can't I initiate the matrix? Well, just like in V10, you need to actually focus on the group that has the compensation controls in it before the tool will be available to you. So it says select the group compensation. And there it is. I'm going to minimize over here so you can see more. As I mentioned, the T button syncs your transforms over here, so I can change the transform, and transforms do update as you scale with the preview, so you don't have to press go to see the change. There is a default settings or spectral on, auto spill on, toggle traditional for one-to-one mapping and not unmixing for traditional compensation, toggle off auto spill if you want to use both positive and negative gated, as opposed to the primary population with auto spill will be set to just the size gated. And now we're still using these data to draw a slope, but we are not using positive and negative gated subsets to draw the slope. We're using robust linear regression. You can hide the spectral plot. The idea here is, of course, you got these green lights to say everything looks good. You do want to double check and go through each of these samples. If you want to change a size gate, oh, looks like it drew the size gate up here. I don't like that. I can either modify this one and move it around, or right, anywhere I put it is going to show me just those events that are in that size gate, or I can just start to gate and it will replace on a per sample basis with the new size gate that I'm interested in. Oh, and I see that this one probably has these beads because it's a special color, and that's where it actually did a good job of saying, well, where is the actual positive events? There's like two different bead types in this, I think, right? And some of them are to bind different. Oh, it's not my experiment, but that's what I've seen. The other thing you can do is actually sync the size gate to the group, and that kind of goes into gating and using these right-clicking and applying the gate to the group. There's two options here. I'm going to go through it, but know that you can sync your size gates. But let's say what would happen if I did that? If I just start to gate and I create a size gate on this sample and it replaces it, that's great. The actual bold means that there are different gates on different samples in this group. If they were not bold, they would be uniform size gating. So what I can do here is right click and apply the gate to the group and resync all, which will override all the samples in the group and apply the group gate that I have the gate I have created here and focused on to the group, right? That is the size gate here. If I apply the gate to the group, it will only override samples that have not been tweaked to be different from the group application. So I'll revisit that here in the next context when we're graphing. But there are two options to apply the gates to a group. One resyncs everything. One only overwrites things that haven't been shifted away from the group. So you can tweak gates and then not overwrite them with a group application every time. So now I'm going to resync all. And what's going to happen here is now this size gate is going to be, you just notice how it's not bolded. So this size gate is uniform across all of these samples. But what happens is that, oh, there's got one that's red now. Why is that? Oh, because this size gate is not appropriate for that particular bead product that was used, right? So I got to move it here in order to get the events and have a distribution to calculate the matrix from. And there will be a couple like that, right? Where I notice I got an error and I need to move them. And now I have different gates on different samples, right? Oh, this one's wrong too. So I better go like that. Or which one is it? It's a U450. Is it a monocyte marker? Oh no, this is just the this is probably the autofluorescence control. So I'm just going to leave it at the moment. What I'm trying to do is just show you the options, right, guys? And of course, if you need to transform something, you can hit the T button. Oh, I see. It does have some positive, yeah, like that. So I think that is an autofluorescence vector. T button syncs the view over here. We're actually showing both ungated and gated events. I'll revisit that in a minute. And you can make changes to the range, compression, right? And extra negative decades, slide it off. Positive decades, reversive, the width basis slider. We'll revisit that, but if you aren't familiar with transformation, we got webinars on it in V10, some videos, and it's essentially the same transform controls over the bi-exponential transform function, which gives you linear around 0 and log further out. All right, so I can hide all these things to get down to this, right? And you can choose to set something as a negative population and can toggle on and off their use, right? You can hide the unused ones. You can reset the whole thing. But this data is pretty easy to work with because I'm using a spectral instrument. I've got auto spill on, so all I have to do is define the size gate and get green lights and know that I'm gated on the region where there is some expression of this reagent and target, and then go create the matrix. So I'm going to create the matrix here just to show you. It'll bring us now to that matrix, which we're viewing the matrix that we just created, right? I kind of lied. So it doesn't automatically bring you to view the matrix. It keeps it open so that you can make multiple changes and calculate more matrices if you so desire. Now, to actually use the matrix, visualize the matrix, we go to the matrix itself, and now we have the matrix shown. We can edit the matrix, or we can apply unmixing correction. Editing the matrix will create a duplicate, right? We never touch the original matrix. We always make a duplicate so you can toggle back to that original one that you created. Within the editable matrix, you now have unmixing correction, which allows you to change the interactions of a particular fluorochrome. Let's go like V450, I think has something interesting in it. I want a dot plot. I'm looking at parameters, and I'm looking at size-gated events, overlay uncompensated. No, I'm on size-gated. I want to go ungated, size-gated. Show other detectors. All right, well, I'll get myself into trouble. I know I was playing with this yesterday, and positive events, ungated events. Oh, it's because I'm not on that control, right? U450, BV, V450 same control. That helps. Right, okay. So you got to be on the right control with some signal to actually see whether or not it's affected. But you can see that some of these signals are changed when the compensation is applied, meaning that we've done something. And if you want to change the interactions between any of those, you can go from this row fluorochrome, right, which is to a columns detector. Oh, that's why. All right, so I'm going to go back to 450 here. There we go. It's kind of what I was looking for here. As an example, I'm sorry, I'm not polished on this one, guys. This is my first V11 webinar. So we're going to change some interaction here, right, between 450 and 515, and you can add or subtract information, see how that added, that changed the skewing. You can go towards the positive by going with a positive number, or to a negative number going to the right. Small changes, of course, can have big impacts, so be careful and don't willy-nilly change these things. Honestly, if you talk to the key opinion leaders across the board that are managing labs from Zurich to New York to Shanghai, you will find that the general consensus is if you have bad compensation, it's not about correcting it, it's about discovering why the compensation controls don't match the actual data that you're generating and create better compensation controls. Willy-nilly changing, modifying matrices is not ideal, and it's not best practice. But everyone wants to do it, so we've made it possible by creating an editable matrix, going to unmixing correction, where you no longer have a number of detectors, floors by detectors. It's not a rectangular matrix, it's actually a square matrix, so it's a one-to-one correlation, and you can add or subtract values here to skew the data just the way you like it. But really, best practice is to get good controls and not have to do this. All right, when we're on a matrix that we've calculated, we do have unmixing correction here, but you won't be able to put any numbers in there because it's not editable, right? So always create an editable matrix first. Spillover spreading is shown. If you did a regular plus minus gate matrix, you'd also get total spreading. Similarity matrix is the cosine similarity scores between the fluorochromes in each color. And you can toggle on and off the heat map, right? Here you can choose any parameter to display. You can choose contour plots, we can overlay uncompensated, and we can show other things. So it's all contextual. So when I select the gate over here, it's showing that subset, right? That gated population in the plots over here. So just be aware. Okay, so let's go on to our graph window. Graph windows allow us to interact with the data, right? And build up a gating tree. So I'm going to go back to my parameter of all and choose my forward scatter parameter and just start gating. Now, when we're here, know that we're focused. The graph gallery is viewed by sample by default. And if we just select a group with a subset of samples, that will only show the samples in the group, right? And when you're on a group of samples, if you start creating gates, those will be applied only to that subset. of samples in the group, and the gates will have this color next to them for the icons and to note that they were created only on that group. So to not get too confused with this, because it can get a little bit crazy if you start group gating and moving those gates around, just start with the experiment data group, right? That's where bad events and good events is created. It's on all the samples. And when you start here, you will gate on a single sample, or you have this option to toggle on what's known as virtual concatenation, where you're looking at all events in all the samples in the group. This is a toggle button, turn on or off VCP. It's also available down here, right? And when you gate in either view, the gating is applied to the group. So I can choose to gate for cells on a single sample, or I could toggle on the virtually concatenated population. So I'm just going to call cells. All right, and go back down into that, and we'll do a dead cell gate. Here, I've got some events off the axis, so I'll click the T button, and I will add some extra negative space. That looks pretty wide, so maybe I will also compress the data around 0 a little bit more and click Apply, and that will apply to all the samples, right? So now I have a clean profile that I can gate. Click my polygon. Every time I click a polygon, it adds a corner to the polygon and double-click closes it. So I'm going to call these live cells. And then we'll go in here. You know, if I don't like it, what I can move it. There, I'll move this one. But what happens when I move one is it now changes. So it's different from all the other gates. So if I move this drastically, right, you will only see that change on the one sample. It's not going to sync that automatically if I'm looking at one sample. If I were in VCP mode and I move the gate, it will move it on all samples. But again, changing a gate location on a single sample will bold the text. And now I know that there's some sample in here that has different gates. In order to sync that, I'm going to right click and apply the gate, the group gate to resync all, right? Apply to group and resync all. Now it's the same gate at every level in that gating hierarchy. If I were to change this gate on one sample, another sample, and then a third, a fourth sample, I'm like, oh, that's the one I want to be the group property, then that's fine. I can change it one, right? I'm going to change it here too, just to show you. 1, 2, 3. And now I'm going to go this fourth sample, and I'm going to go, I just need to move it a little bit there. And so what I'm doing here is I've changed a couple, but I'm going to only sync the ones that I haven't previously changed with the new one. So that's apply gate to group. And it won't override these gates. It'll just sync everything that hasn't been shifted, which is very helpful if you're used to moving gates to groups and having them overwrite and then have to re-change them afterwards. That's why there are two options there. Okay. So in this case, I'm going to take this gate again, and I'm going to do it one more time and call it good. And I'm going to re-sync it to all, show the parent population. What's the question? QC should not be run on compensated data. I don't believe so. No, this algorithm is designed to be on uncompensated data, Matthew. That's the Flow AI like. If we were doing a Peacock algorithm, then that's compensated data. And maybe that will be here in the future, but I don't have a timeline for it. But different methodologies specify whether they're to be run on compensated versus uncompensated, and this check is for uncompensated data. Okay, so what can we do here? I'm going to just plow through and give you a little gating demo, and I know I'm already over time, but I'll keep going for another, few minutes here, at least. And let's go ahead and just gate to, we can search, right? CD3 shows me everything. If I don't like seeing the uncompensated in these options, I can turn that off. So I'm only looking at compensated, no scatters now. And then when I search, I get a much smaller list to choose from. If I don't like the orientation and I wanted to toggle these, I can transpose now with a button or an Option T on my Mac here. Okay, so that's a hotkey for it, or transpose the axis with the button. Again, VCP mode allows you to gate on everything versus a single sample. And I'm going to go back to scatter here. All right, so here's my CD3s. I'm going to go ahead and gate on them and call them CD3 positive. In there, I'm going to do some quadrant gating. So let's go CD4 versus 8. And I might actually want to do some other removal gates. Let's see what we got here. Just looking at that profile and knowing that I'm not focusing on the smaller scatters, I can clean this up better. But, this isn't a gating tutorial. It's more how to use this program for the first time tutorial. So I won't go into the nitpickies of that, but I could, if I see that and I'm like, oh, I don't like that CD3 positive, I could say, I want my side scatter to be low, right? And that's going to clean up and get rid of some of those extra events. 4 versus 8 is my goal here. There we go. And then quadrant gate. So we got these nice quads that will allow you to offset them as well. So I can actually move relative to the center point to make offset quads, which is kind of cool. There's also curls and spider quads available. Only one set of quads per, particular view can be applied. And then if I go into my CD8s here and we look at kind of some functional information about these cells, we're going to go CD45 RA on the X and maybe CD27 on the Y, which should give me some nice T-EMRAs to gate on, T-effector memory RA positive cells that have been differentiating, right? So I'm just going to call this TMRA. And that's it. I'm not going to change much more. I realized that because I shifted the gate after creating it, it changed the bold text to say that it's not the same. So if I want that to be the same, I right click and apply to group and resync all, and now I've got the change applied to all of my samples. I've been mentioning this wonderful and not showing it off, but like we can look at every sample, right, in this graph gallery, or we can toggle on to view by parameter. So now we're going to look at this subset that we're on, right? The cells, live gated, CD3 positive subset that is being displayed here against all parameter combinations, right? So if you're looking for where's the difference, where's the streak, it's pretty cool. And you can batch that across the X, or you can choose to batch it across the Y, okay? And the controls over here, I'm viewing the population that's actually shown. If I want, I can view the active gate, which means when I select a subset gate, I'll be actually able to see that. And view target population, which is me dragging a population from the hierarchy. So we're now looking at this target population relative to this gating. And you can imagine now if I change the gating, right, the target population is going to change because downstream effects, or the change that I'm making is affecting the T-EMRAs. You see this little eyeball target? That means I'm looking at this population. So that's the way you can like look at something else and change any level in the gating hierarchy by focusing on this population. You just want to choose the target. Viewing the active gate again is viewing what's actually selected here. So that is one subset of my quads. I'm going to set this back here. I'm going to resync it, get back to what I was doing. All right, so now I'm only showing the Q3, or the Q1. Let's see, what haven't I shown here? We have, again, drawers to control the things that you want to do, including the T button, right? Click on the T button, it'll sync the views. We are now seeing both gated and ungated populations, the gated population in blue and the ungated in yellow there. There are controls for the axis parameters here on the right as well. So you can choose X and Y or the color axis option, which is turned off because the type of plot that we've chosen as a default is pseudo-color. Plot resolutions can be changed up here. So now we get higher resolution plots, right? There's 512. We can go to other color palettes if you don't like the traditional Viridis and Plasma are there. Inferno, I kind of like the blues and the blue greens personally, but I'm so familiar with FlowJo Classic that it's hard to go away from. We can do histograms, right? Choose the color, background, smooth it. We can do regular dot plots, right? Monochromatic dot plots. And we can do contour plots here. There's my, let's get a little contour. Voila. Right, and there's a level slider for the contours. You can make them higher or lower instead of just static options. There are toggles here also to control whether you show the labels in the graph gallery. If you have lots of gates or quadrants with log names, they can get pretty messy, so you can hide that information, just show the gate. So again, you can collapse all this information, but you can control the plot type here, type resolution. I haven't shown a third color heat map statistic plot, right? That would be, this is the parameter that we would then be using. So with this one, we would end up with, oh, messing around with all my bubbles here. There we go. So we want to see something like in the CD3 positive gate, in our quadrant gates. Let's just go to the TMRES. If you ever get confused about like where you drew your gate, remember these navigation arrows work like V10, so I can go to my target population, I can press the up arrow, and it'll go back to the place where I actually created the gate, and it'll always get me back there. So I was just thinking I could toggle on a heat map and show that you can choose another parameter, and I was like, what could we do? CCR7 maybe to show something cool. Right, and if we go here and we start looking at CCR7, let me find a CCR7 plot. Maybe I should search for it. Yeah, Tim Smart. And then go here and expand this out a little bit so I got some better colored action. Then I might start seeing where those cells are in all other bivariate plots. See, so like the high ones are MR1 super low, 27 positive. It's just a way that you can highlight, right? And most people use the color maps, and once you do a TSNE or UMAP, and then you color map each of the other channels so that you can see where the lineages are and where expression is in that map. But this is an example. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, like V10, we've now synced with the transform range so that you get red at the top, blue at the bottom, and green and yellow in the middle. So if you want it to really pop, change the transforms and spread that data out across the range of the visible plot that you have. Other navigation tools, right click, go forward or backward. But let me get into just a few other things for you guys before I run out of time. Let's go to the tables section. All right. So I played a video for you earlier. I'm not going to run TCNE and XShift. It's going to take too long on my fairly decently sized data set for a demo. But let's go ahead and just make a table. So if I bring in my experiment data group, right, that'll have all those 20 samples in it, and it will create rows. If I then go and create, and then I can add keywords here on the right-hand side. So maybe my sort order or my discrimination keyword. I'm going to go ahead and go key one iteration, okay? And add that, which is a button down here. And then also go condition, which is kind of the same as the iteration one, but just written differently, right? I like my keyword iteration because I've given values that will sort instead of alphabetically ordering things, it'll give them a numerical order. And I want the healthies to be the first thing in my graph. So that's why I add that one. And then we can add stats. So I'm just going to add the TEMRA stat here. Know that this statistics tool over on the right will allow you to add medians of one or more populations. And you're doing it for the populations that you have selected over here. So if you want, it shows you what I'm focusing on. But if I want to get medians for both, I double select by holding down the shift key, and I've now got those populations selected, and it shows me both of them by overlay there. So add statistic will give me those stats. Drag and drop of gates will give me frequency of parents. Add keywords will give me the keywords that I need to now make a chart. And there are other options in terms of dragging and dropping. You can toggle on that I want counts and frequencies when I drag, right? Some people like to do counts. And whether or not you want summary statistics to be shown, which ones. And then we can export that from the table view right here. Export table, whether you want to include summary stats or not in that export. And it'll give you a navigation bar where you can then say, I want to put my table wherever it needs to go, right? So that just exported as CSV. But my purpose here is actually to summarize some of this information. And I'm going to do that by creating a chart from the table. So first thing you do is select a table from this drop-down list. That is the available tables that you've created that we're going to focus on. And we're going to be a categorical primary access. And I want to look at my samples by key one iteration, and I need to show something, right? What statistics? So I'm going to do frequency of parent of statistic. And there we go. I have a stair-stepping increase in T-MRES in disease states from healthy to RSV to flu. And again, the key is that you want to determine, you have to add a keyword to separate things, right? And you can actually do more than this. If I added more keywords to my table, I would have more options. If I want to just show every individual sample, choose file name. All right, there's each individual sample in order. And then the summary is merging all of them together by iterating over my keyword one iteration, right? I want to show other stats. You can do it on the same table, but the range is going to change, right? Now I'm looking at medians, MFIs, so I'm in the thousands. It can be a very different thing. So my median of CD27 in my TMers is lower, but they're all supposed to be negative anyway. I'm just showing you how you can create this initial table. The choices of what type of chart you're going to make is a bar versus a pie. You can choose statistics to show sums or means or counts. You know, on a log scale or a linear scale, showing legend, showing the table down below with the actual summary statistics of the groups, right? What are the frequencies as we go up? And whether or not we're going to show error bars, right? Showing or hiding those. And what the statistic is for the error bars. Now, the key point to make a statistical test here is that once you set up the comparison, right? You've created your chart, you've set up what the factors are that you're going to view and what statistics you want to see. Now I can actually do a t-test. So down here is the statistical test option, and I'm going to do it's Wilcoxon rank sum versus t-test. And what you need to do is say, I want to specify the category. I'm going to test across because you may display more than one category in a chart. And then what is the baseline for comparison? If I'm going to do a t-test, I need to compare it against something, right? And doing pairwise across everything is a little crazy. It gets messy. So in this case, I want to compare against the healthy, each of my other conditions, right? So I'm going to choose healthy as the baseline to compare against. You can choose subsets of them to do the tests on. You can set your statistical threshold or add new thresholds and then choose them. And then finally, the kind of cherry on top is showing the connecting lines for comparisons here, right? I'm comparing against healthy to the others. I can show the p-value that is calculated for those comparisons, as well as an asterisk if it's deemed significant. And I do have two significant p-values, the difference between healthy and flu and healthy and COVID, right? So that's my chart. You can do more in terms of you don't like the colors, there are different color palettes and stuff, right? And you can duplicate this chart again and modify it once you've created it by this duplicate button, or create as many charts as you want, make them different colors, different styles, and have different comparators. But you can make many of them. Okay. Last section, I got 5 minutes until this ends, based on the time that was allotted to me for the meeting. So this is a report section, right? If we click on the reports, you get um, this pagination, and we can change the type of page, right? If you want a PowerPoint or a portrait or a landscape. I've chosen the custom and generally use that because I just like the way it works. When I drag and drop, it gives me a really nice size plot relative to what I have on there, right? And if that's not the run I want, then I can go up one level and I'll do my CD8s. Okay, so there's my TM cells. How do we navigate across this, right? You move things around. You can actually grab, if you don't have it selected, you can actually, first we'll zoom. Okay, how do you navigate? Right now I have the pointer, so I can grab stuff, but I can't drag, right? If you grab the hand, you can drag it around and move anywhere in the canvas. The plus sign will zoom in. The minus sign will zoom out. The fit to screen puts the entire canvas on the screen. 100% is the maximum zoom, right? So you may not see anything. Where's my stuff? Oh, it's over here. So zooming out is helpful. Zooming in, zooming out. You can add more pages. So this is the first page of my report, but if I want more pages, for maybe I will batch across this and then add also a second page for my table, you can click the plus page, and then you have 2 pages to work with, right? And each one will be batched or unbatched. If you choose not to batch it, you can turn off the batching cog. In this case, I just want to show you how to do kind of a basic batch for the moment to start. I've got 20 samples, right? And I've got them ordered healthy, RSV, flu, and COVID because of the keyword that I imported and sorted by here as the sort order keyword, okay? Now I know that I've got the order. I've got 5 samples, 5 samples. So how do I want these to be displayed on this page? I want to go with 4 rows and 5 columns and a batch across so that I'll get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next RSV, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The next flu, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And so the batch button is up here. View the batch, and it's a toggle. I can either see the batch or I can see this is the source page. And I'll view the source. And now I just toggle it, right? And I get all of those plots. Oh, 3 rows, that doesn't work. I want 4 rows, There, that's better. It was spilling onto the next page with 3 rows. So now I've got these samples. You can obviously see that they're different just by looking on there. You could also have seen that, in the graph gallery. If you look by sample on the quad or the CD8s, you can scroll through, and like in this case, I can get 5 per row, and now I'm just like the batch I did, it's already here in the graph gallery. Okay. Now I'm going to view the source again. Batch. And make another page. I can now copy this or save it as a source report. So I can say, I want to see this batch view as my default. And then I'm going to add another page on this. And I will add my chart, which are available from this little icon for charts, and grab my chart and drag it over. I can also take the table if I want, right? Tables, and bring it over here. So now I've got this table displayed. There are various options, right, per sample to change, I'll just make a new one here. My original report here. If I zoom in, options to be aware of here in the report editor is, of course, these elements that are in boxes can be moved. That includes moving the label, which I think many people will like, independently of the graph window. So these can be moved away from being in the wrong spot or, however you want them, which I think is pretty cool. And then everything's connected if you grab it as a plot level. A right-click option has new menu items. One is graph object visibility. So you can now hide all of the elements on the graph to just make it a plot, right? You can also toggle on, I'm showing all now, toggle off the legend here, the annotation itself. So I'm going to toggle off the legend. I can toggle off the annotation box, which shows the samples, and I can choose to toggle on and off the axis numbers and labels for the X or the Y axis, right? We also have the ability to go back to the original graph. So if you see this graph in your report and you want to go back and make a modification, right? Open original graph brings you to the graph context with that plot displayed, even if you had originally left the graph context in a different state. That makes sense? Just like in V10. Of course, we can make overlays, right? So I can, and we can actually toggle on the virtual concatenation option and then bring in a gate on a group. And you will actually see, so if I want to see this plot kind of virtually concatenated at a group level with COVID first, I've got virtual concatenation on. You'll see it better if we go back here, right? When I turn off virtual concatenation, I get one sample per, and I'm looking at the COVID group here. So I've got 5 COVID positive patients with different profiles. If I turn this on, it will now merge them together into a single profile, right? So what I can do over here, which is pretty cool, is turn on virtual concatenation and then drag over the CD3 positive population, or the Q1 in this case, at a level that is actually all samples virtually concatenated together. So this one is the COVID group, right? Concatenation of COVID is the sample name, which is pretty cool. And then the flu group, right? Change the group that I'm focusing on. So now I have different samples. They're still concatenated, bring over the same thing. There's my flu sample, right? And I like 1, 2, go to the healthy, drag that over. Boom, there's my healthy profile. So if you wanted to summarize in a virtual concatenation, it's very easy just by toggling on VCP and dragging over that level in the gating. And it's interesting. I'm on this, I can drag the group, I can drag the gate because I'm focused on that gate in the group, but I get the same profile. So this would be a comparison of the summary, summarizing those. Oh, I actually probably failed. RSV group. There we go. That's better. Right. And so there's a summary of all 5 patients in a virtual concatenation world. And of course, if you want to, you can have alignment and chart and text settings. So you can change all of these features here. If I want to increase the resolution of the plots I don't have to go back to the graph window. I can do all of those changes here. I can also change the X and Y axes. So I want to make them 512. If I want to align them, top and space them around the center, I can, and then change the type of plot, or my bad, gotta select something, or the type of plot or the parameters that are being used, or I can copy and paste these, right? So I'm going to copy and paste this whole subset here and change now what is being viewed. Instead of pseudo color plots, I'll change it to heat map statistic. And the statistic that I'm going to focus on there is going to be CCR7 maybe. Right, so there's our CCR7 positive that end up in that top right-hand corner because there are a positive, 27 positive as well. Just an example, right, of manipulating the plots, right? Don't be afraid to right-click because there are options once you select it. Again, if you don't like the position of the label, you can move that now. If you go and move it on the graph window, then that will move by default on all the plots when you bring them in. And go to this section to pull in a chart summarizing what you're doing, all right? I realize I didn't show histogram overlays, but I'll do a quick one for you guys, and then I'm going to have to call it for today because I'm classic at going over time with demos. I'm going to check your chat questions here as well. So here I've got some, yeah, I'm just going to make an overlay and show you the histogram options real quick. Going to make a new chart or a new report, sorry. There we go. Overlay. And drag. Sure. Let's try this. So remember concatenation, and now I'm going to change this into a histogram instead of the chart settings, plot settings, and histogram. And then I'm going to go to the next group, right? Different group, and drag the same subset, which is Q1 on. Right? So now it shows me the concatenation of healthy versus the concatenation of RSV, and then flu, and then COVID. Right? Oh, I'm dragging the wrong ones, right? So apologies, I realized that. Regardless, all right, so you've got these things. What you have now available to do on a plot that is a histogram is to, oh, I guess I messed that up, huh? Let me try this one more time. Boom. Histogram. That's COVID and concatenation of flu. All right, so those peak heights are different. I'm getting myself into trouble. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking for it in right click because I'm such a diehard, old version user when I should be toggling it on. So normalize is a checkbox. It's not a right click option. It's under the histogram. It'll become available once the plot type is. Again, very new. This is fresh off the shelf. It is available as of last night on the website. So that option wasn't even in existence. But I hope you like what you've seen so far. I'm going to check my chat questions and be like, what's the interest in creating keywords? Okay. Well, we cannot export the report as a PowerPoint. So what keywords, what's the interest in creating keywords? Keywords are labels. A lot of people don't label their data very well at all, right? And if you work with a lot of data over the years, you will find that being able to parse out those samples into groups by just right-clicking and saying, create groups from a keyword, super easy to make your groups. When you want to iterate anything in the report editor over a set of samples, you want to have a distinguishing keyword that is the iterator keyword and one that is the discriminator keyword. So keywords are extremely helpful. The PowerPoint batch is not available, but what you can do now is right click and copy this bad boy. And you can do this from anywhere. I can do it from the graph gallery down here when I'm on any plot. If I want to preserve this plot the way it's shown here, I can just copy it and I'll go to PowerPoint and I'll paste it. and look. Oh, I fail so bad. I'm sorry. Maybe I did that wrong. It's because I did it on the histogram, and maybe I fail at demoing. Sorry. Let's go back to this plot. All right, copy and paste it into PowerPoint. No. Sorry, now I'm just annoyed because I 100% know that is demo syndrome right there. Copy image and paste the image. Yeah, there we go. All right, so I don't know what I'm doing wrong there. Maybe I've found an issue with certain types of plots in the copy paste, but I push for this really hard for all of you to be implemented as quickly as possible, because when I'm in the graph gallery, what do I want to do? I want to preserve that image, and I now don't even have to put it in a report. You don't have to copy from a report. You can copy from the graph gallery itself or the main plot, or if you put that into a report, it will also copy and paste. It's a PNG image, but you can see that it's pretty high quality. You can see everything. It scales well in the application PowerPoint once it gets there. And in the future, we will have even more image export options with different formatting. But baby steps, right? Right now, I'm super happy with some of the improvements that have been made and some of the functionality that they've added. So if you have questions about that functionality, you can always reach out to our team at FlowJo@bd.com. That's my tech support team that I manage. And we have application specialists across the world that can help you out and give you the information you need to be successful in your analysis approaches. Other than that, I think I'm going to call it for today and say, if you have any other questions, type them in and I'll read them and we'll talk through it. This will be available as a recording in a couple days, and if you reach out, I can put together the slides as a PDF and share them with you as well. Thank you very much for your time, and good luck with your analysis and work, you guys. I really appreciate you spending this hour and a half with me, taking a look at FlowJo v11. Hope it was helpful.